Hi guys, the Russian war against Ukraine is not going according to the plan, again. In desperation, Putin is planning to start a new war in Moldova and open the Western Front, hoping that NATO officially joins the fight. It's hard to explain to your people how great Mother Russia lost the war against weak Ukraine, but losing against NATO in the World War III is a different story. Many countries already asked their citizens to leave Moldova as soon as possible, and some NATO units already moved close to Moldova border from the Romanian side, so it looks serious. Most of you guys probably have never heard of Moldova and self-proclaimed Transnistrian Republic, so I feel obliged to give you a really quick introduction. First, who is who? You have Ukraine and Romania. Between them there is a country called Moldova. Inside Moldova there is a river Dniester. Westward to that river there is a Transnistria, self-proclaimed republic. Officially it's recognized as a part of Moldova, but in reality it's a quasi-independent Russian puppet state with a population of 470,000 people and 1,500 official Russian peacekeeping troops, and tons of extremely old Soviet ammunitions. At first sight, it's very much like Donbas and Lugansk separatist republic, but the story here is way more complex. If you look at the ethnicity composition, the problem quickly pops up. 75% of the population are Moldovans and 7% are Romanians. They both speak the same language, Romanian, which makes 82% of Romanian speakers. Then you have Ukrainian, Gagauzians, Russians and Bulgarians, all minorities under 5%. If you look at Transnistria region, Moldovans 32%, Russian 31%, Ukrainian 29%, a very different picture. The prime reason for their separation is language. Russians and Ukrainians didn't want to have Romanian as an official language, which is close to Italian and very different from both Russian and Ukrainian. So, Moldova has one official language, Romanian, and Transnistria 3, Romanian, Russian and Ukrainian. Transnistria is not the only separatist region in Moldova. From 1990 to 1994 there was Gagauz Republic, another unrecognized state, where most of the people speak Gagauz, which is a dialect of Turkish. The difference from Turks and Turkey is that Gagauz are Orthodox Christians, not Muslims. Now, instead of Gagauz Republic, there is a Gagauz autonomous region in Moldova, where they can use their language freely as an official. Do they still want to be independent? Well, quite likely. There is another very interesting region of Ukraine south of Moldova called Budzak, which is a very likely place where the Russian Navy can land to join the forces of Transnistria. Here the ethnicity mix is the following: Ukrainian 40%, Bulgars 21%, Russians 20%, Moldovans 13%, Gagauzians 4%. There have never been any separatist movements here, but this can be quickly changed with the Russian help. To understand why there are so many different nations in such a small piece of land, we need a bit of history. In the 19th century there were no countries like Romania and Ukraine, and these lands were divided by two empires, the Russian and the Ottoman. These empires were in the constant fight and had 12 different Russo-Turkish wars over the course of history. Most of them were started and won by Russia. The reasoning was simple. Russia wanted to expand its territory and the Ottoman Empire was the weakest one in Europe, so why not? In addition, the rest of Europe hated Ottomans for recapturing Christian lands in Balkans and enslaving its population. Back in the year 1800, contemporary Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia were all under the Muslim Turkish rule, and it was kind of nice that Russia volunteered to reclaim this land for Christian world. In 1812, at the end of 8th Russo-Turkish War, Russia annexed Bessarabia, which is roughly contemporary Moldova minus Transnistria plus Budzak. The land became just a regular part of Russian Empire, and Russia started to colonize it with people from different parts of the empire. In 1829, at the end of 9th Russo-Turkish War, Russia placed a military rule over two large chunks of land called Wallachia and Moldavia. Not to be confused with the contemporary Moldova, which was called Bessarabia back then. This Moldavia region was directly to the east of contemporary Moldova. At that point, the Western powers realized that Ottoman Empire was too weak and Russia could fully destroy it in the next war, and making Russia too strong and too large was a very bad idea. In 1853, Russia started another war against Ottoman, the Crimean War, with the goal to take Constantinople, the modern Istanbul, to be able to control the Strait of Bosphorus, which is the only exit from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. Other European powers were definitely not ready for that, and France, Britain and Piedmont Italy fought on the Ottoman side. Russia lost and gave Wallachia and Moldova provinces back to the Ottomans, keeping Bessarabia. Now Russia realized that it's time for Plan B. Instead of annexation, which European powers are not okay with, let's liberate oppressed people and create new countries for them with strong pro-Russian ties. Does it remind you of the current Russian behavior? The roots are in 19th century. This time, Russia had a very strong allies, Christian population of the Ottoman Empire, and started a tense Russo-Turkish war, which they easily won in 1878. Newly independent countries of Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia and Montenegro were created. Then Romania expected Russia to give Bessarabia back to unite it with the rest of the nation, but Russia said no. And finally Romania realized that the real goal of Russian operation was annexation, not liberation. Then the First World War started in 1914 and Russia started its fight with Ottomans once more. This time the goal was to liberate Armenian land from the east. Russia had some initial success, but they were more focused on the European front, and then in 1917 communists came into power and Russia was not able to continue the war and had to sign humiliating Brest-Litovsk peace treaty, which effectively dissolved the empire. According to the treaty, Bessarabia now is united with Romania and Transnistria stays with Russia. Then Ukraine declared its independence from Russia as well, and Transnistria became de facto part of Ukrainian People's Republic, which existed for 2 years before it was annexed by the rebranded Russian Empire called the Soviet Union. The Soviet authorities created the Ukrainian Soviet Socialistic Republic and Transnistria became part of it as an autonomous Moldovan region. Then Stalin divided Eastern Europe with Hitler and signed the infamous Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and the Soviet Union immediately annexed Bessarabia back. Then the Second World War started, where Romania was fighting on the Hitler side. They managed to recapture Bessarabia back along with a large chunk of Ukraine, including the city of Odessa. Then Hitler lost the war and in 1945 Bessarabia was returned to the Soviet Union once again. This time Moldovan Soviet Socialistic Republic was created on its land, minus 1,000 part of Bujak, but plus Ukrainian Transnistria. Bujak part was added to the Ukrainian SSR as a compensation for the lost Transnistria, which was a pretty good deal. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Moldova became independent and declared that Romanian is the only official language now. This created worries that Moldova would reunite with Romania soon. Transnistria, which was not part of the original Bessarabia and where Ukrainians plus Russians formed 2/3 of the population, decided to declare independence. Moldova objected and there was a war where Moldova was supported by Romania and Transnistria was supported by Russia and a bunch of volunteer units. Among these units, surprise surprise, there were far-right Ukrainian nationalists. Yep, these guys are direct descendants of Azov battalions, and 30 years ago they fought with Russian forces against Moldova. Isn't that beautiful? The war ended in 1992 with Transnistria victory, zero international recognition and 1,500 Russian peacekeeping troops. For the last 30 years, Russia regularly transferred huge amounts of money to support Transnistria and prevent it from reuniting with Moldova, who was doing much better economically. At the same time, Transnistria maintained a good relationship with Ukraine, which makes sense since the Russian border is really far away. When Russia started a war in Ukraine 2 months ago, Transnistria declared a neutral position and did not recognize the Donbas Republic, claiming that Transnistria is a different case because it emerged during the crash of the empire and Donbas is a fully orchestrated conflict made by one major player, which was a very bold statement for a state who is officially sponsored by Russia. Clearly they wanted to keep their status quo, same as Moldova, who was not very proactive with sanctions against Russia, and flights from Moscow to Chisinau are still in operation. Moldova is definitely a more pro-Russian state than Ukraine was before the war. What is truly fascinating is the public opinion about unification of Moldova and Romania. They were extremely low in Moldova for the last 30 years and only recently rose to 41%, which is still not enough. On the Romanian side, the pro-unification support is constantly very high, over 80%. My guess is that after the current war, Moldova will join Romania as soon as possible. And the question of Transnistria remains quite open. Now, the Russian and Transnistria official propaganda says that Ukraine wants to attack and occupy this land because historically it was part of Ukraine, assuming that Ukraine has the same imperial ambitions as Russia. There were already several false flag operations, and everything suggests that Transnistria might do a preventive offense against Ukraine. There are 1,500 Russian soldiers, but there are quite a few local soldiers, and they can potentially form 10 to 15,000 of troops. They have lots of weapons there, like really a lot. There used to be a big Soviet military base there, and there is a big question whether you can still operate that old crap, but the danger is real. In addition, more weapons and soldiers can be easily airlifted over there. Ukrainian anti-missile are not operating much in that region, plus you need to fly a very short segment if you come from the Black Sea, and then you enter Moldova, and Moldova won't shoot any Russian planes or helicopters, at least for now. What is more likely to happen is that Transnistria can attack the rest of Moldova and potentially capture it. The president of Moldova recently said that the army is not ready to fight any real offense because it was neglected for the last 30 years. So they would have to capitulate or ask NATO to intervene. Both options are fine with Putin. But my pragmatic guess is that most likely this whole situation is designed to keep a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers around the border with Moldova instead of going to fight in Donbas. And this is another Putin's bluff. Now, let's return to the main front in Donbas. After more than 2 weeks since they started the second part of the war, not much changed. As I've predicted, they managed to capture a couple of villages here and there, but nothing major, and the whole thing goes extremely slowly. You can check War Mapper day by day with a detailed explanation of what was taken by who. It looks like Russians are trying to push Ukrainian forces out at all costs, losing an extreme amount of soldiers again. Ukrainians want to minimize their losses and retreat from their positions when the situation is getting too bad, which might give you some impression that Ukraine is slightly losing Donbas, but for the last 3 days I don't see any more villages captured. There is absolutely no way Russia can capture the whole Donbas before May 9, as Putin wanted. Another desperate move is a recent advance towards Kryvyi Rih, which is not part of Donbas, and the idea here is to capture the whole region of Kherson and potentially declare Kherson People's Republic and claim it as a big victory. But Ukraine holds the defense there really well. At the same time, Ukraine managed to recapture some land north of Kharkiv. Now Russia has only 90,000 of active troops, which is actually less than what Ukraine has. The US Lend-Lease and the conference in Ramstein, where over 40 nations gathered to understand how to help Ukraine, is quite a decisive moment in the war. The West finally realized that Putin must be destroyed at all costs. The number and the quality of the US offensive weaponry is unthinkable and much superior than the Russian counterpart. In a couple of weeks, Ukraine will be able to start recapturing everything, including the whole Donbas and potentially Crimea. Russia has zero chances to hold southern Ukraine under the current configuration. The border is extremely long. Putin has two options: capitulation or military draft. My guess there will be an option number 2, and the rumors about that were circulating for quite a long time. How this will be done is a big question. Everything shows that Russians are not ready to fight for Putin's war. Most of the Russian peasantry still thinks that Russia is winning in special operation, and that the reason why it goes very slow is that they want to save civilians' life. They claim if Russia really wanted to capture Ukraine, it could be done within 24 hours using all military potential. I'm not joking, that's a very common opinion over there. Russian propaganda can't really say that we are losing the special operation and it's actually a real war and we need your help to conquer Ukraine. It's gonna be a suicide for the regime. Instead, they are trying to upgrade the war to World War III, saying that the West wants to destroy Russia and it's time to unite. So far, it doesn't really work that well, but if Russia provokes NATO in Moldova, that can help a lot for a successful military draft. Putin has one chance here. If he miscalculates and peasantry will hide at home to avoid the war, he's done. In case of a successful military draft, the only thing which Russia can do is to hold some of the current possessions, not to do any offenses because all the high-precision missiles are depleted and Russia can make like one of these per week. All modern Russian tanks need French optics, which they can't get due to the sanctions. There is no way Putin can win the war. The question now is how bad the loss will be. And I don't believe in a desperate nuclear strike at the end. Putin might be crazy, but people around him are not. My guess is that Putin will focus on the war against Russia. He wants to make it his personal feudal land, a fortress without middle class and rich oligarchs, only patriotic peasantry marching every day for the glory of Mother Russia. Currently, Putin is very successful in that war. Super rich Russian guys lost everything they had in the West. Smart, educated people, particularly software developers, already left Russia, and more people are planning to do that within a year. Mass media is fully controlled under the War Censorship Act, and the life of the bottom 50% haven't changed much, with an exception that they feel more proud about their country because of TV propaganda. The only problem here is that it's all very fragile, and as soon as the bottom 50% realize that they got cheated and Putin lost the war with Ukraine, the only option for Putin is to create de facto a large North Korea, constantly fighting with the West, but nothing is going on for real, except people accept the strictest censorship and propaganda. Let's see how it develops. There is only 1 week left until May 9, the most sacred day for Putin's Russia, which is supposed to be a great victory in World War II. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.